I recently listened to Bad Bunny's 6 studio albums so far, and I thought now might be a good time to do a Bad Bunny tier list. And we're gonna go in chronological order. So starting off with Por Siempre. Por Siempre is his debut album from 2018. This album isn't really my type of music that I would listen to personally, but I do really appreciate the risks they're taking. They're just keeping things interesting sonically. They're really not afraid to switch up the beat to something completely different. And I gotta give it to them. I think this was a pretty solid debut effort by Bad Bunny and his team. So I'm gonna give this a B tier. So that brings us to Yo hago lo que me dé la gana. That's how you pronounce that. You know how in English we have LMFAO? It's kind of like that. I feel like this album might have been like a step in the wrong direction for Bad Bunny. He starts doing more of this Latin trap sound. I feel like some of the creativity from his debut album just isn't there. I feel like the album as a whole is somewhat boring and predictable. The track Bete is actually pretty solid, that has some depth and some feeling to it. And my by far favorite track off of this album is Zafaera, which is kind of like a throwback to the old school reggaeton. So I'm gonna give that one a C tier. That brings us to El Último Tour del Mundo. And I don't like this album, leaning way too much into the Latin trap side of things. There's a song where he's complaining about he can't buy a Ferrari for his girlfriend. I'm sure it's tongue-in-cheek or he's being facetious, but I just think I do like this song called Estrellas. I think that's a beautiful song. We're gonna go for the D tier with this one. I just feel some of the charm from those first 2 albums really isn't there. And that brings us to Un Verano Sin Ti. I really just don't like this whole auto-tune thing. I personally like auto-tune when artists like Charlie XCX or even Lady Gaga kind of use it artistically. I guess you could say auto-tune is kind of like nudity. When it's used artistically, it's perfectly fine, but I feel like some artists, such as Bad Bunny, kind of go overboard with it. The one thing I do appreciate about this album is I do feel like it's somewhat the spiritual predecessor to his latest album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos. He does have kind of the occasional throwback to more traditional Latin music, such as merengue. And that Ojitos Lindo song is pretty decent, and the Titi Me Pregunto is kind of, yeah, I'm not crazy about it, but I don't hate it. So I'm gonna give this a C tier as well. That brings us to the Horsey album. I feel like this was another step in the wrong direction for him. He really tries to lean into this whole Latin trap, tough guy energy. One thing I will say about this album, I do feel like this one maybe from a technical point of view might have the best production. These are like really clean sounding instrumentals, really minimalist. D tier for that one for me. That brings us to his latest album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos. If any of you have been following me here on YouTube, you know I've been a huge fan of this album. I think this is such an improvement over his past albums. There's so much more creativity, so much more interest instrumentally. He's got actual live musicians. He's kind of taken reggaeton, but it's not 100% a reggaeton album, which I think is why it works so well, because everyone gets sick of this dembo beat and it needs to be used sparingly. And I think Bad Bunny's finally realized that. And I think it's really cool that for the salsa song on there, Baile Inolvidable, he enlisted the help of an arts high school in Puerto Rico, and these kids can play their asses off. S tier for Debí Tirar Más Fotos. This album's held a special place in my heart. That's about all I have for today. Thank you for being here. If you got any value out of this video, please be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.